Hi guys, this is your elementary video for September 16th and 17th, and this week we are going to be sharing the gospel and also talking about the tabernacle. So I hope that you've enjoyed the month so far, just talking about where God dwells, because this week we kind of hit the climax of our lesson series, and that God wants to dwell within each one of us. So you're going to start your lesson. You have a couple of different picture cards to represent some of the story facts of the last 2 weeks. So the first activity you guys will do will just take your classes and have them put the story facts in order. And it's a really good thing to start with because we're going to be talking a lot in this lesson about what we've already learned. We're going to be talking about where God dwelled with Adam and Eve and where God dwelled with the Israelites when they were wandering, and so on and so on. So it's a really good way for them to kind of get their memories of what they had for the last 2 weeks. Or for kiddos who didn't come for the last 2 weeks, it's a good way for them to have a little refresher so they can go into the lesson of the tabernacle. So then you'll be telling the lesson of the tabernacle. You're going to be starting with discussing again, just some recap. So you'll be talking about how God created us to walk with us, to have a direct relationship with Him. And that's what He did with Adam and Eve. And then when sin entered the world, that relationship was broken. And so the idea is the purpose of the tabernacle was for God to live among His people once more. And so you need to explain, of course, what a tabernacle was. And so I've given you a lot of visuals this month because that word is kind of a hard, complex word. But essentially, we want our kids to understand that the tabernacle was a tent. Essentially, it was a tent and a place to worship God and the place where God dwelled. And so what you'll do is you'll actually, on your whiteboard, you'll have, I'm going to move my camera now. You'll have your tabernacle. Okay, this is the gate, and this is your tabernacle. And you'll start off by letting them know that the tabernacle was the center place of their communities. And so you'll have a couple of these tents to represent where they lived. And so you can just put their tents outside of the tabernacle around the four corners, so that could represent the fact that the Israelites lived around the tabernacle. And then you'll actually, or the tabernacle grounds, because this gate represents the tabernacle grounds. Now this is the tabernacle itself. This is the tent of the tabernacle. And then you'll have a bunch of these little pieces that show where everything goes. And so you'll have the holy place is here, and that's where the priests came into. And then you'll have the veil that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies. And then you'll have, of course, this is where God dwells. And so you'll be explaining as you go through. You'll explain what the holy place is. You'll explain what the Holy of Holies is. And then I've given you just a couple of different pieces. There's a lot of pieces in the tabernacle. Tabernacle grounds, there's so many different elements. And so I've just chosen to talk about the tabernacle tent itself, and the bronze lavender and the altar of sacrifice. And so those are important because we're going to be doing a gospel lesson today. We're going to be talking about needing to be washed clean, and this is where the priests would wash. And then, of course, Jesus as the perfect lamb on the altar, when they would have to put their sacrifices on this altar of sacrifice. So you'll lay out the full structure of the tabernacle, talking through it piece by piece. And then you're going to close your lesson with a gospel. So the first thing you'll do is you'll talk with the kids about what it means to be part of God's family, that if you've already trusted in Him, that He dwells within our hearts. So you preface it by saying, before Jesus, God's people had to do so many things to get cleansed for their sins and to be in the presence of the Lord. And you've had just previously explained all that stuff. You explained it with Adam and Eve. You explained it with the wandering in the wilderness and the cloud of smoke and the cloud of fire. And now you've just explained the whole tabernacle, all the different little intricate pieces and how specific the details were and how specific they had to follow the directions. And that all happened before Jesus. But when Jesus came, when Jesus gave His sacrifice on the cross, all other sacrifices stopped. They were no longer needed because the one truly priceless sacrifice had been made in Jesus Christ. And that if you've put your trust in Jesus, He's made you clean through His precious blood, and it's His sacrifice that allows you to have access to the Holy of Holies, to God living, now dwelling within you. And you can use these pictures to explain that. So you can take your magnet and say, now, if you trust in Jesus, God dwells within each one of you, right? And then you're going to go into an invitation for students who don't know Christ. And I've given you these as well, so that you can kind of break apart the gospel. So essentially what you're doing is you need to make sure that they understand the problem, right, sin, and then they need to understand the solution, which is Christ, and that will give them, that cleanses their hearts. And so you can use that. I'll come down here again. you can talk about that, how God dwells within them, right? But if you don't know Jesus, then you're covered in sin, right? Explain what sin is. And this is all written out for you as well. So you explain the problem of sin. You explain the solution is Jesus. And when we receive Jesus, we are cleansed, and now we get to have God dwelling within us. Okay, so it's just a picture representation of the gospel. So that is your lesson for today. And then you're going to close with kind of a fun activity. It's about following directions. So you have a picture of a pig, and it's essentially just line drawings. It's a circle and some triangles, and I've given you every single step to go through it. Now, you don't show the kids the picture. You just give each one of them a single sheet of paper, and then you give them a pencil, and you don't show them what you're telling them. Then you give them the instructions, and then you see what they come up with and see if they follow the directions. Hopefully they come up with something close to a pig. They might not, though, and then you show them at the end what the actual thing was if they had followed the directions. And that just kind of harkens back to how specific the tabernacle directions were that God's people had to follow. So anyways, I'm super excited about this lesson, and I really hope it works out well. I'd love to hear your feedback after, because we've never taught the tabernacle to our kids, and so I'm just really encouraged about how God worked through us in this lesson, and I'm just encouraged. I would love to hear how He works through you in telling the lesson. So thank you guys so much, and if you have any questions, you of course let us know, and we'll be happy to answer. Thanks so much. Bye bye.